Does It with Sally Mullins.
This is what you get when you Google weed dress. I'm originally from England. I lost my accent. I do still have the inability to love or be loved. I have to live the lifestyle of an athlete to get the body of a crack whore. I used to look like a soccer mom, and now I look like a soccer mom who walked out on her kids. Because the economy sucks, that's why. It's not as good as Trump is saying it is. Sometimes I just want to be like, hey, Donald Trump, how come this guy whose face I'm sitting on is homeless? Not all people who do porn were molested. Some of us are just from Florida. At my age, you're not getting back at your parents, you're getting back at porn. So what I'm saying is, if you see my porn, you might be watching too much porn. Boom, chicka, boom, boom.
Sally shows you how it's alright.
We are going to diagnose you with oral gonorrhea. I go based on a blood or a pee test. They go based on what you've told us.
Hello, everybody. Konnichiwa, Biff.
Good afternoon, Jacques.
Anyways, that clip was from a old contact friend comic that I am a big fan of, Sally Mullins, that as the evils of social media that I talk about a great deal, now and then there is a silver lining in the cloud. And I reconnected with Sally really recently over Twitter, and I'm like, hey, would you mind coming on and talking to Biff and I and a few dozen of our hockey pals on our podcast?
Oh yeah, hockey.
And she for whatever reason, the goodness of her heart, she decided to lower her standards and come on board. So with that, I say, welcome, Sally. How are you?
I'm great. And don't you remember my standards?
Well, I do remember your standards, and even where your standards are, you've lowered them to talk with Biff and I. Trust me.
Yeah, you don't want to meet these people.
So I had it's funny because you usually Biff's wife, like my wife and our friend Joe, who I started the podcast with, we get people. We have friends around the world. Biff's a native of Japan and Toronto, and a lot of people listen to the podcast except our significant others. But I wanted to give my wife the heads up. I'm like, hey, you remember my friend Sally who does comedy and porn? You're going to be cool if she's on the podcast, because the one time she listens, if I don't give her the heads up, and she's like, why are you talking to porn people without me knowing?
Yeah, it's Sally. It's granny porn. It's okay.
And I even told my friend Joe. So I met Sally when I came out to LA for a short time. Joe came out, and I started the podcast a few years ago with a mutual friend of Biff and mine, Joe. And Joe and I did a sketch comedy show in Boston that actually helped get me moved to LA. And way back when, Sally, I don't know if you remember, KCOP was a UHF channel. When I first got to LA, I had a comedy music video show on that with a co-host. The host was Tammy Heidi from K-Rock at the time. And
oh, yeah.
We did an episode, and it was our tribute to Benny Hill. And it was the stupidest, absolute lowbrow humor for junior high kids. But it got us a lot of traction. Playboy TV wanted us to shoot a sizzle. They want us to do other stuff. And that's when I put out an ad. I'm like, hey, we're going to shoot this thing. Can somebody, and you came and you shot a bunch of promos for us.
Yeah.
Soon after that, life got crazy. Biff and I had a mutual friend. Some people know her as my first wife, ended up moving to Vancouver to play pro hockey. Joe moved back to Boston. And I'm like, yeah, this comedy thing that is my life is going to be put on the shelf. And
so this was like what year?
This is
Y2K?
It's right around there.
You're right around there.
Right around 2001. You turn around and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Didn't I used to do all these fun things? And now I'm getting to get back into it. So like I said, I follow a bunch of comedians. There's a great social activist comedian named Dante in LA.
Dante Rocciolelli, I know him extremely well.
I follow. I'm a fan
He's
of his
cool.
comedy, but I'm a really fan of what he's doing every day in the streets. He's a social justice guy, and I think you came up on his. Oh, you might know her.
Yeah.
Type thing. So I started following you. I send out. I follow you. You follow me back. I'm very old. Social media scares me. The toaster, my 11-year-old has to plug in for me. But so you follow me back and I DM you, if I'm using the right term. I'm like, hey, do you happen? Or no, I think I went to your website because.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, by any chance, are you the same Sally Mullin who did porn?
Of course I am.
Who did this? and so that's how we circle back. So I'm going to, again, introduce Sally. Sally is a comic and a huge fan of your work. You have a special right now that we play clips at the beginning that's on Amazon Prime called Taking It Sleazy that is so cringeworthy, uncomfortably over the top hysterical. And like if you're going to take, and I'm just saying this, if anybody hears me and does, oh, I'm going to go check out Sally, don't do it on a first date. Like be really comfortable in who you're seeing the show with. If you have an edible Rex complex with your mom, maybe you can bring your mom, but I would I would very much stay away if it's your first date. If you're
if it's your first date and that goes really well, I think you're due for a second date, right? I mean, that's what it.
Yeah.
You're going straight to the point, right?
Well, so you know what, Biff, you either found your soulmate or you found somebody who's going to wind up on Dexter's table.
Right.
And nothing. Right. And there is no in between. Sally also has a podcast that I listened to the other day, and I'm like, oh, not only is it funny, it's like there's like some funny, awkward, helpful advice in here,
Yeah.
But it's very raw. The podcast's very real, very honest, right? I mean, it's like I'm sort of a mentor, and I don't know why that is, but I can't have coffee with everyone. I can't go out for drinks with everyone. I already have a big enough drinking problem. So I do the podcast. Porn Mom Podcast is like a way to give advice. If you want to get into porn, don't do what I did. You're in comedy. I mean, I'm passionate about comedy, so that part of it can get pretty intense.
So I don't even know where to start because there's so many different places. Your world, my world, Biff worlds kind of intersects. One of them is when you say a porn mom. Currently, you just before we pressed record, you are the proud mom of nine four-legged creatures. 8?
Yeah.
Did you say 8 or 9?
It's up to 9. It was 7, and then 2 kittens got put into my life over the pandemic. They're about 5 months old now. That was one of the ones I held up to the screen, that little boy. Yeah.
And Biff is a dog lover. And one of the things that Biff loves to point out to me, usually on a group text with all our hockey buddies, is I'm not on Facebook, but he's friends with my wife on Facebook. And I cannot tell you how many times Biff has given me the heads up, Sally, that, oh, my wife just adopted this other 3-legged animal that just flew in from, the country Qatar on a plane that I wasn't aware we were going to be hosting for the next week, month, 4 years, depending, because we foster and she works for a lot of rescues. And right now there are 3 dogs, 2 blind cats in the laundry room that are quarantined because he just came off a plane. We have 3 cats of our own, so that's 5, 6, so 8. So we're only at 8 right now. But
that's awesome.
It's great. And when, like I said, to see all the, and I'm going to take a step back. When I first met Sally and I was shooting the promo for mine and Joe's show, it was called In the Crease TV. I was working with porn people at the same time. And I mean, at the same time, and it's hysterical because it's true. I was also working on the TV show Touched by an Angel. And the show's offices were right next to Jerry's Deli on Ventura in Studio City.
Which died.
What's that?
Which died.
Which
did it?
I think they rebuilt it. It burned down, but I think they rebuilt.
No. I think it died. I think let's not. It's not important. Let's move on.
But so Jerry's telling. So the show was written at that office. It was shot in Salt Lake City, but it was posted in Los Angeles. And the executive producer, her name was Martha. She was dubbed by the media the angel behind the angel. And it was a top 10 show. And the funny thing is, I was on a hockey team with a lot of celebrities at the time. That's right around the time, I met Biff, and Biff knows these guys. And nobody had heard of the show. I mean, it's a top 10 show, and nobody on the West Coast or East Coast has heard of it. But the entire flyover states, everything in between, shut down Sunday nights, at 8:00 to watch this show. And,
I remember.
And so here's the fucked up thing. That office was Rome while it was burning. Everybody in that office, all the writers came from the sitcom world because Martha used to run, I think it was Facts of Life, and I forget the other show that she was showrunner on. And so all these people, there was like 10 writers in this office. It was a writer's office, and all of them were married. All of them were fucking each other. All of them were having affairs. A couple of the people were really nice, but it was the biggest cesspool of backstabbing, ugliness. At the same time, on the weekends, I'm shooting with these porn people who are like, here we are. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. I mean, could not be more honest about either how they got into it. And like yourself, it's like, yeah, it's not out of the awful stories about, desperation or this or that. There's a lot of that, sure. But a lot of the people we were working with is like, this is my job. This is what I've chosen to do. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm in fact proud of it. And after we get done shooting, I'm going to this Coke party and fucking anybody who's there. Do you want to go? It was what, but on the other hand, these touched by an angel people in the media and in press.
Oh yeah.
And even the cast, and and the funniest thing, one of the 3 people who I really liked at the office, who were great mentors, who were wonderful people, there's one guy, Barabam is his name. Couldn't have been more gay, couldn't have been more Jewish. And if our core audience had any idea that the Christmas special was written by a gay Jewish guy, because we would get photos of these small towns who all get together at the church on Sunday nights to watch it together, And again, it's like, so I'm meeting Sally, who's like, hey, yeah, I do these spanking videos. I also have the show at sunset at the Comedy Store. You should come check it out. And it's like,
yeah. You're like, what is with LA? Everyone has a fucking double life in one way or another.
Well, one of the other guys on Touch, one of the executive producers, great guy. And I remember one time he was saying, though, he's like, so what's your side gig? And I'm like, no, dude, I'm 100% committed. This is it. And he looked at me like I was the biggest idiot. He says, the show could go away tomorrow. If you don't have 5 oars in the water at once, if you're not leaving here and writing something on the side, networking over here, then you're the biggest fucking idiot I know.
Or you better be investing. You better be like investing with all your free time, like having fun, investing. Hey, there wasn't even crypto then, What the fuck? But
so when we met, it's like, it was very eye-opening. It's like, you know what? These are my people. These are real people. And it's like I said, the dichotomy of I'm working on this God show on a network run by Satan. And on the other hand, these people who show up like and a Satan t-shirt with the nibbles cut out are so much more real and honest. And it was fun. And like I said, it was very eye-opening. And I think over the next year or so, I saw a bunch of your things, that my current wife had just moved out. And like I said, we love to go to comedy shows. We've seen so much of it. And just last night, the clip that I play at the top, my wife and I said, and Biff is also a huge, I think the last family outing you did before COVID, didn't you go to a Jim Gaffigan thing together?
Yeah, it was a Jim Gaffigan, yeah.
You guys are way bigger comedy fans than I am, for sure.
Well, why would you give money to the competition, right?
Well, it's the same thing. It's escapism for us. For you, it's the grind.
Yeah.
And so the wife and I sat down, and Sally's humor is so cringeworthy, awesome. It's like it's so uncomfortable and hilarious, and there's so many jokes you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm laughing at this. Oh my God,
because it's sad.
No, and it's like your whole bit about, like, you know, with the electric company, and it's like, you're the nicest person who called us all day, and I'm not giving anything away, but you know, just watch the trailer, and it's hard to watch the trailer and not say, yeah, I'm gonna either rent this or buy this. So the wife sat down last night, and she, at least 4 or 5 times, I had to hit the 10-second back button because we missed the next joke.
Oh.
Because either she or I, like, just belly laughed over it. And what was really awesome is when I said, oh, this is Sally, do you remember? She's like, no, not really, but, like, I'll check it out. And within the first or second joke, she goes, oh my God, yeah, we saw her here. We saw her. There was a little makeshift comedy place. All I remember is right across the street from one of those great, what street was it on? Like a junkyard type thing where, like, you'd be driving down and you're like, oh, this is where people buy a giant, like, 10-foot Flintstone, you know, next to, like, some pottery stuff. But we had seen you a bunch of places. Yeah. We absolutely loved it. And again, it's like Biff said, if you're on a first date and they like it, you might have found your soulmate, or you might have found somebody that you just have to run from. One of the things I love about watching comedy specials at home, because I have the memory of a fruit fly, I'll try to tell somebody the joke the next day. It's like, oh, I saw this comic and they were talking about this. But I, you know, in a comedy club, you can't sit there and take notes because, this bastard's stealing my joke. It's like, no, this bastard loves your stuff and wants to be able to tell people, dude, you have to check out this. So I was making, your we dress Coke vibes thing.
I have like 9 of those dresses. Yeah.
The little interviews with people afterwards. There was like so many of like, where do you get this dress?
I know those people. Oh my God, my friends who came and saw the show, and like those parts were like, that was the greatest way to end the special. Just talking to the audience and having them say weird stuff, and yeah, everyone was like, I love the dress.
The great way to start the show, because I don't remember when it became a thing that you have to do a comedy skit before the comic walks on, for their thing now. But your little, maybe it was a 90-second build-up. Your bio was, if you wrote that bio, it was so every way that you could build yourself up simultaneously tearing yourself down. And I'm trying to think of like some of the, but I'm scrolling through.
Broke ass Nicole Kidman.
That was it. Right.
White trash Susan Sarandon.
And again, I'm not going to mention any of the stuff in the special, but just the stuff in the trailer when you're like, I went from looking like a soccer mom to the soccer mom who left her kids. It's like, oh my God, that's awful. And my friend Joe came up with the term awfulsome. And
what is it? Awful what?
Awfulsome.
Awfulsome, yeah. That's...
and the whole thing, some of us are just from Florida. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, you know what? People rag on Florida so hard, and I kind of defend it, but you gotta, because see, when I grew up in Florida in the 80s, it wasn't as crazy. Like North Florida is way crazier than South Florida. Plus, you can't tell it's crazy when you're in it being crazy. You're just living your life.
Is there like a North Florida, South Florida thing that we like misconception that the rest of the country has? Like just like Northern California and Southern California are completely different animals, right?
Absolutely different animals. Although NorCal is way more woke, than SoCal, yada yada, and SoCal's got like these Republican bastions, but North Florida is more like country. It's more like near Alabama, and it's big schools. I mean, it's UF and FSU, right. But South Florida is more the beach and more crack.
I have two really good friends who are from North Florida, and one of them, you know, he's been in the same industry as you forever, and he always refers to North Florida as L.A., Lower Alabama. And,
that's funny.
And I've done a lot of sports things, like, you know, with Major League Sports and the different things. I've been to Florida a number of times, and what I found, it doesn't matter if you're in Tampa, if you're in Jacksonville, if you're in Orlando, you're in Miami. It's all the same, great urban cities with NFL and NHL teams, all this stuff. But you go 10 minutes outside of any major city in Florida, and it is Ned Beatty, Square Like a Pig, banjo music, run for your fucking life.
It's how LA is like. I mean, I'm looking to buy property now, but it's not in LA. It's like in redneck meth areas, because that's all you can afford. You know, like all I can afford anyway. But I kind of feel like everywhere is like that. Like you just turn a corner and it's a whole different vibe.
It is true to some extent. It is true to some extent. You know, I right now I live about a half hour outside of Boston, and from one town to the next, it's like, oh, these elementary schools and high schools are the equivalent of prep schools in Los Angeles. The next town over, it's like, oh, okay. Am I in Bakersfield all of a sudden? Is this, you know, and you know, the only reason Bakersfield exists is so Fresno can feel good about itself. So I'm gonna do the typical stupid interview stuff, because I really want to know, and I know you got to be bored of talking to it. Did you come to LA to do comedy? Did you come to LA to do porn? Did you come to LA to do comedy and fell into porn? Did you come to LA to do porn and fell into comedy? What was it? What came first?
Neither of those. Okay, I didn't move to LA for either one of those. I just wanted a change. I really wanted to move to Greece. I had been working at a children's theater in Florida, and I was trying to turn it into an adult theater. So
you went all the way adult.
I was trying to, you know, mold it a little bit. So we were having fun. We had like a black box theater, and we were doing some cool plays. We were doing Shakespeare. We were doing John Guare. We were doing like The Mousetrap, you know, by Agatha Christie. And I was just overworked and overwhelmed, and I had been to Greece a couple of times, and I wanted to go live in Greece. And then I met a dude, and I was kind of like, all right, I'm 25, he's 23 or something. I was a little older. Yeah, maybe I was a little bit of a cougar. Yeah. But I'm like, I'm approaching my late 20s. I need to give this relationship thing a chance. So I had a regular serious boyfriend, and he wanted to move to LA because he wanted to get into production, and he was from Gainesville. We moved to LA, and I was screenwriting because I didn't want to like start over as an actor, because I'd already done a lot of acting, TV, film, commercials, Florida, and a lot of theater. And I was like, I want to perform still, but I don't want to rehearse, but I want to write. I mean, I came out here to do screenwriting, but I'm bored. I need to perform. So I looked in the back of the LA Weekly, and I saw a comedy class by Greg Dean, and there was a free audit. And that dude is really good, Greg Dean. And I went and I did the free audit, and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I've always been funny, you know, and I got up in front of the class, and I just instantly like felt the energy of making people laugh. And I was like, I'm in. I'll take this class. It's a bunch of dudes. And like, there weren't as many women in comedy. And I was happy about that, because I wanted to get away from the dude I moved out there with. So I signed up for his class.
So, you know, it's funny when you say it's how much it's changed, and it's changing more, but it's not changing fast enough. How do you feel? Has the Time's Up in the Me Too thing, which is funny to ask, you know, a woman who works in the porn industry and comedy, which are both cesspools of humanity, you know, not on the talent side, but on the people who bottom feeders who feed off the talent side and stuff like that. Is it easier to be a comic? Is it easier to be a content provider like now than it even was 2 or 3 years ago? Or is it just as difficult to kind of navigate those waters?
Well, it's really funny you should ask that because I was on set last night, a night shoot with a regular movie. It's going to be an R-rated movie that I had to take my clothes off in this movie. And it was almost like a non-sexual thing, but I had to get naked in this movie. And everyone was just so chill and so respectful. And granted, you know, I'm 53 almost. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm sure that even a few years ago, there would have been like one or two guys who were like, hey, I've seen your porn, you know, like just a couple of things I had to deal with that got kind of gross, but there was nothing like that. It was just like artists. It was, and I thought that things really have gotten better. What I feel like I have is more power now. I feel like people have my back. Like if there's a club owner and he wants to take out his dick, I feel like I can just say, hey, I don't want to see it. Like, no offense, but please don't do that. And like, that's that. The buck stops there.
But the fact that even still happens is just still mind numbing.
Well, honestly, I don't even think it's still happening. It's not still happening to me. I'm sure it's still happening to younger girls, but I just feel you've got a better chance of being able to control the situation and having people back you up.
I mean, it's funny because, again, this is 2001 when Joe and I did that. Over the next few months, we became friends with a lot of the actresses and either their significant others who drove them to and from, and they loved working with us because we actually, as much as the comedy, again, was just so fucking stupid. You know, there's one skit where Joe and I are in an office, our desks are closed, and he's like, oh, I don't think the new girl's working out. And I'm like, oh, I'll say something. I hit the button. This girl sitting behind a desk in a blazer answers a phone, and we're like, Ashley, we don't think you're working out. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. She pushes back from her desk, takes off her blazer, and there's a weight bench next to her desk. And she just starts doing bench presses. It's so fucking stupid. And we shot it with a sports bra, and then she did it naked for rated R. And the fact that, you know, so yes, we treated them so misogynistic. It was, like I said, it was a tribute to Benny Hill. It was but we treated the actresses like people. God forbid.
Yeah.
You know, didn't try to lecherously like, oh, you want to get drunk after? It's like, thank you so much for coming and doing this. Over the next couple months, we kept getting calls. It's like, are you shooting again? Hey, can you write something for me? Hey, I'm trying to transition to this stuff. And it was like, they were just so blown away because, they got to meet people who didn't take their dick out, you know, just to
there wasn't any sexual harassment there. I mean, I was doing scenes with you guys where, you know, I can't remember if I showed my tits, but other people did, like right in front of me. And I never remember a vibe of any guy trying to like capitalize on it because, I mean, you know, I'm from the 80s. Like we were like, oh yeah, he's going to hit on you. I mean, just flirt with him, but you know, you don't have to do anything, of course. I'm from that era where you kind of had to like play along. If someone was a perv, that's how you got the job. Yeah. But that's gone.
Well, I hope it's funny because, you know, like, and Biff and I have played hockey with some of the biggest names in TV and movies. It's just weird. This is inner circle of hockey, Sally, in LA, and without being the douchebag name dropping things, you know, it's funny because, you know, I was talking to Tom Hanks at Jay Leno's house, and he was saying he can't stand the way Marty film and drops names. No, but it's like, and so we'll go to these events because we become friends with people, and it's unbelievable how many people will, you know, females will come up and offer to do awful things to meet people, or, you know, we've been behind the velvet rope and we see people who like this band or like this artist, and Biff's been there and I've been there where we're like, hey, do you want to come say hi? You know what I mean? It's like, the people who capitalize on that, it's like when you see it in movies, it's like, oh, right, that does happen. But I don't like, but talking to you, it's like, I don't know how much that has changed. Yeah. My next question, are we done saying you're a female comic, or are you just a comic? Have we gotten past the Jerry Lewis women aren't funny barrier where you're not a female comic, you're a comic?
I feel like in LA clubs and, you know, like big city clubs, you're a comic. I mean, God forbid you say, what's that, comedian, you know, C-I-E-N-N-E. Oh my goodness. But you go outside of LA, this is what we were just talking about with You Turn a Corner. Like, I get these road gigs. I mean, I was in LA and I didn't think anyone was voting for Donald Trump. And then I got a gig like 2 hours away and I find out, yeah, they are, they've got his back. And that's just 2 hours outside of Los Angeles. So I think on the road, it's a different story. They're not going to send two women 2 hours away on the road for the most part, because people that won't put butts in seats. They're going to come out and see. They'll skip the comedy show that week. Even the women probably will.
Yeah, I did hear a lot of that. Like I listened to a podcast from Jackie Cation and Laurie Kilmartin, and they talk a lot about in these just regionally or whatever, these clubs where they feel like they have to always have the male comic on as the headliner or whatever, and all this, and it's ridiculous, and it's as if like people actually aren't listening to the comedy, right? It's like just about, it's like anything else where why are you contextualizing these entertainment products based on some arbitrary thing like a genre, your gender? It's like funny is funny, right? And that's the thing that I can't get past, because there are just so many funny people, and many of them are women and many of them are men, right? I mean, that's really where it's at. It's the way people think, and like often I'm at a gig and I've been in comedy over 20 years. Yeah. And then there's a dude who's the headliner, because I go out on the road as a feature a lot. And there's a dude who's a headliner. And you know what? Maybe he's only been in comedy 12, 13 years, but he's an experienced headliner. He's more experienced on the road. He's more experienced doing an hour. That is cool. But I've also been in situations where I'm the feature, and then there's a headliner who's got about 7 years in, and he doesn't have many credits, and he doesn't have a special, and he's not that experienced. It's just that he's a dude. Yeah. So they naturally shifted us into, and the person booking that might even have been a woman. It's just like how they're conditioned to think,
That it's so I try to stay on the rails with the sideshows. Biff and I record every 2 weeks. 1 week it's a catch-all thing, and it's always off the rails. And then we do these focused sideshows. But yeah, the whole it's nauseating and tough for me because what you go up against. My mom couldn't possibly imagine a woman being president. Right. And it was really hard a few years ago because, my niece was getting really involved. This is 2012. Like, I forget when it was that maybe it was 2016. But anyways, it was like 2012. She was my niece was graduating high school. And my mom's like, she needs to be focused. She shouldn't be getting that involved in politics. And my sister's like, Mom, she turns 18 this year. This is the perfect time to get involved. But my mom couldn't.
She's going to be voting.
But she couldn't. Yeah. My mom couldn't. And the same thing. It's like when somebody you would assume, okay, a woman's going to open the doors or not be, put you in this category, that category, or keep you in this box or that box. You think it's like, no, I'm going to, get to work with somebody. Because on the other side, to run a club as a female, she has to fight through the same level of shit and barriers on that side of it that you have to be a cop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, some club bookers were talking on a Zoom. It was like a Zoom panel with the Palm Springs Comedy Festival through the pandemic. And one female club booker, she said, I want the bill I put up to be funny. And if I've got 6 comics on it and then I don't have a woman, somebody's going to call me out for not having a woman. But if I think that guy in the number 4 slot was funnier, then I want to leave that guy in there. She goes, first and foremost, I want a funny show. I don't want to worry about having to fill a quota, race and sex. And, it's tough because you do have to, I think you got to look out for some diversity in a lineup, just because your audience, even if you think that female comic is not as funny, think about your audience who wants the variety. Because I remember when Kevin Hart was doing a tour, and this guy who I was friends with, and he was a Kevin Hart fan, and he was a guy, and he said, I don't want to go see that because it's like 4 or 5 dudes. He goes, I want the female perspective. If I'm going to sit through a whole comedy special or a movie, at least I want that like variety, that experience. It's not a complete experience to me.
Yes, as an audience member, I'm kind of I'm right there with you from the standpoint of, I mean, how many of these stupid dick jokes do I need to hear from these dudes, right? Or whatever the case may be, right? I don't, we had that one Andrews Dice Clay or whomever else you want to name, right? One of these older, I don't need that, rehashed, right? And that's the thing that's great about, whether it's, women who do comedy or like, minorities or, people, who are, immigrants who do comedy. I mean, what they talk about and their stuff and their approach is just so different.
Yeah, I will say though that by needing to diversify it, you've also got a lot of people, and that's like all they talk about. Like all they talk, and they're a new comic and they're not that developed and they don't have that strong of a point of view. All they have is like, here's jokes about my family who's from here and they're different. But it's not really like a refined point of view. It's not that experienced of an act. Yeah. But, that's going to happen. I think comedy is going to be in an even better place in 3 years. But I do think it's improving all the time. It's growing all the time. It's got to have growing pains, though.
Well, it's funny because the whole wave of, well, I can't say this in the woke culture. And look, there is something to it. So many comics that I know and I like who going back 10 years started saying, yeah, I used to make my living. I would have a comedy special, which I make no money on, but oh my God, the college booking, it gets me. But then the colleges became too woke or whatever, but at the same time, on one hand, it's like, yeah, I think people have become uber sensitive in certain issues. On the other hand, it's like, I grew up worshiping Don Rickles. Like as a role model when I was 9, maybe that choice was ill-advised.
Have you seen how he looks? Even his diet.
Right. And it's like, so Biff and I play on this hockey team in LA, Sally, and our locker room is kind of like a UN. There's every race, creed, and color in there. And and women. And one of my best friends, she's one of my wife's best friends, absolutely love her. Like the joking, racism, misogyny between us, you know what I mean? And this just between buddies, it's horrible. We would all have to cancel ourselves if anybody ever saw it.
Yeah.
But as far as a comic going out there, it's like people who look like me who are like, well, it sucks because I can't make jokes about hitting women anymore. I can't make jokes about people struggling because of their social economic status and the zip code they were born in. Why can't I make fun of I'm getting canceled because, I keep, and part of me is like, yeah, I kind of get that. It was easier when you could, do these jokes about like the difference between this color and that color, the difference between this race and this. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, all those jokes were done before amplification and microphones were in front of comics. And yeah. I think we don't need that. If you can't be funny without the absurdity of life around you, if you have to use, that as a crutch and so, like, when I work out bits, like I joke about my own family because it's true. My brother-in-law, he's from Colombia, he's a landscaper. My mother-in-law, was from Korea. She ran a laundromat. My mother of Irish descent is drunk. You can still have things like that, but you don't have to be mean about it or be demeaning about it.
Yeah.
And I do. I think over the next few years, like the comics that I love, again, like, the Emo Phillips, I don't ever remember any joke he's told in the last 40 years that's going to get him canceled.
I don't really worry about it so much with my stuff because I just tend to bash myself, but I do tell some jokes that are dark and they can be degrading, and I do have certain views. I mean, has it gotten too woke? Yeah, there's a lot of situations where it's kind of ridiculous, and you have to let comics be comics. I think that if you get canceled or if there's a big problem you start on the internet, then you have to decide, like, do I want to kind of adapt to like what's palatable now, or or do I want to sort of like go with my own flow? Because when Roseanne, she tweeted racist stuff when she was high on Ambien or whatever, some people were saying, well, Roseanne has this huge following, she should go on the road, and just people who want to come see Roseanne can come see Roseanne, But I don't think that those people who talk shit or they went blackface to some dance or something, I don't think they want like a big racist following. I don't think that they right? I think they fucked up.
Or let's hope not, right?
Yeah. I don't think anyone's like, you know what? I'll just get my people and we'll do my tour. I don't think that they're looking for that, So maybe better for now that they say, hey, sorry, I didn't, this is who I am. And then maybe like chill and adapt, try to adapt a little bit.
It's funny because I remember, when one of the things I really miss about LA, one of the things I really miss, and again, I got there late 90s, is I one of the many reasons I moved out there was to do music and comedy. And I was working at this post house, and on a Thursday, I would get the LA Weekly, and I would plot out the 10, 12 places over the next 4 days that I was going to go do an open mic.
Yeah.
And you could go absolutely anywhere. And I would like, okay, I'm going to go here. And if I get there early and sign up, I'll get on by like 8:39. But then if I drive over here and I sign up, I might get on around 11 midnight, and maybe I could squeeze in one more. Just before the pandemic hit, and it's something else I want to talk with you about in a few minutes, your military stuff. When I lived, my wife in 2014, she got a job that moved us to the country Qatar. I ended up becoming friends with a guy who,
cool.
Yeah, works for Armed Forces Entertainment. He's one of my two buddies who right now is in North Florida, but he was a Marine for 8 years. In his last year in the Marines, he was stationed in Bahrain. He got stationed in the Armed Forces Entertainment office, and when he was getting ready to leave the military, they're like, do you want a job? So he's been there for 28 years, loves it. And I've booked a lot of tours with him with the Big Three, the WNBA. And just before the pandemic, a mentor of mine who's a big, has done, 25, $200 million blockbuster movies. We were going to do several tours. And as you know, with the military tours, they are phenomenally cheap.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have the option. It's like, well, I could bring a host, like an MC or a camera guy. And I'm like, well, even though I went to film school, I've never loaded film. I'm not, that's not my thing. Like, I am not.
Same here.
So I'm like, well, I used to do this stuff. So I'll tell you what, I'll be the comic. I'll do 10 minutes of warm up. I'll bring the guy out, do the little fun interview, talk about the movie, show the movie, and I moderate the Q&A after with the soldiers. And I started to put some material together with my friend Joe. I live in Boston, Sally. Boston. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to start doing some open mics just to get used to being in front of a crowd. There's none. Like, there is none. Within an hour radius, we spent like an entire weekend looking for places that do it. And I mean, okay, I can drive an hour and a half with no traffic to this place on the other side of the state because on Tuesday nights they have things. And it's
damn
right. And it's one of those things where it's like, I listen to a lot of comic podcasts and different comics, and they're like, yeah, I'll go to New York. I'll have a new bit and I can hit 4 or 5 places a night, to work.
Yeah, that's what everyone says about New York.
But LA's, LA, you have to do a little more driving, but you can, you can go to the Ice House on like a Sunday night, and then, the comedy store, they have a monthly open. You can get these open mics at these huge famous places, but there's so many makeshift comedy things. It's like, at this bar or that bar. And I just completely sidebarred. But one of the things about woke culture is I remember I used to do this bit. I was at a place, and it was the first time in my life I got hit on by a dude. And it was awkward and uncomfortable. And, you know, my wife, when I talked about this, like my wife always loves it because she's like, you get it. Like she's like, now imagine that every single time you've ever gone into a bar your entire life,
Right.
that's what it's like having a vagina, you know? And
Yeah.
so when I used to talk about that, I wasn't making fun of the dude. I wasn't homophobic about it. You know, at the time, I probably was more homophobic when that event happened. And that kind of cured homophobia for me because I'm like, oh, dude, just go. You know what I mean? It turned out to be this funny exchange. But when I put it in my bit, I wasn't, this guy is awful because he does X, Y, and Z. I'm a better. And that's the thing, as far as a comic goes, if you can say, oh, I was in this uncomfortable situation. I was and I've talked about it. Like the last tour I did with the military, it was with Ice Cube's Big Three. And it was, 6 ex-NBA guys, the woman who put it together, who I will never stop loving. She manages a bunch of these guys, her assistant and my assistant. I was the only white dude. And I never felt uncomfortable. So when I talk about that, and it's like there was those jokes where they were kind of trying to turn on me. It's like, oh, how does it feel? And I would make jokes back, but it never became something of like, it was a race thing without being a race thing. When this guy had hit on me at the time, it was an awkward moment for me that I'm like, oh my God, this is awful. And then even in the moment, I'm thinking, I'm going to use this. I remember. Of
course.
But without, it's like, so this fag came up to me. It's like, no, well, if I can't talk about that experience without using a derogatory term, then I'm not funny enough to even be in front of a mic in my own basement.
Yeah, it doesn't, God, well, but now there's also, I hear so much shit on stage too, though, that's sort of like, comics do tend to go with what's trending. So right now it's like so much like man bashing that's not really coming from an authentic place. It's more like, this will really work. Everybody hates straight white men right now, so I'm going to go with that. And is that really coming from your heart? Is that really funny to you? Are you just trying to like follow what's trending on Twitter? I mean, that's what I feel like a lot of comics are kind of doing. They're like, yeah, I don't want to get canceled, and you got to be really woke right now, and that's what's on TV. So they're just writing this act that they think people want to hear and get behind.
As a straight white man, who is the butt of all these jokes, yeah, we fucking have it coming. Like we deserve, we deserve each and every one. And then straight white comics who are out there, it's like, it's not fair. It's like, a black guy can say this about me, a woman can say this about me, a Mexican can say this about me. It's like, yes, they can.
I'm not saying you didn't have it coming. Yeah, I'm not saying you don't deserve it. I'm not saying you're not going to get more of it. But I just like, as a comic, I'm like kind of bored of hearing it.
Yeah.
Because right. I think a comic is sort of saying, okay, you talk about my special being cringeworthy, and gradually naturally I've been doing this like 20 years, but I'm talking about some shit that people don't necessarily want to hear. I had to start and work through a lot of people in the audience feeling sorry for me and not laughing and being made uncomfortable. I had to work that shit for like almost 2 years before I put the special up, And I feel a lot of people are taking an easy way out. They're like, "Hey, what's kicking ass right now? Trashing white people, Let's right. do it."
I want to reemphasize, when I say cringeworthy, I say cringeworthy awesome. I remember Sarah Silverman saying, if you look back at something, a comedy you did 5 years ago and you're not cringing, you weren't doing it right because you weren't yourself.
Yeah.
And but the thing is, you make you put yourself in the center. It's like you are, I don't want to say butt of the joke, but you're like, but at the same time, you're doing it in a laugh with me, don't, not at me type thing. And you don't talk politics at all, except your one joke about your economy not being that good,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like, yeah, there's so much fun around different things, that you don't have to just do the same. And again, a lot of the comics that I like, that Biff likes, it's you can take a routine from Brian Regan. It's not dated stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can take a 20-year bit and what he's doing today. Jim Gaffigan, you can take, a 20-year-old bit and stuff like that, because it's incredibly funny, but it's not dick jokes, and it's not, these jokes. And the same, all of your jokes, they're so relatable. You live such an unrelatable life, but you make it very accessible too. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm saying that the right way.
No, that makes sense.
Like your thing with the water and power. Like if everybody has had those phone calls, and again, it's so hard not to say, "Oh, this bit where you say that," because I don't want to give one punchline away, because people have to either rent or buy it on Amazon Prime, taking it sleazy. But it's like, yeah, I've had those conversations. Like your life and my life were so different, but here I'm a straight white guy north of Boston, and you're in it in LA, and it's like, yeah, I get that, because I've had those situations. I've had those. So your comedy isn't going to be in 5 years if somebody looks at your special and say, yeah, I don't get that. Or it's like, yeah, that might have been funny in 2020, but it's not funny now. Like, no, it's all the things that you brought, to the forefront about yourself, about your life, about life is something that's not going to get you canceled and is going to hold up, when you did it, and in 5 and in 10 years. It was really great. It was really, really great. But you make people laugh with you in the situations, not looking down at anybody else that you talk about. Even when you talk about homeless people. Even the glowing way you talk about homeless people. No, and
I mean, I'm talking shit on men. I'm doing stuff, I'm bashing dudes in my own way, because I'm talking about real life experiences, but that's what you've got to do. You've got to live your life. I mean, if you're going out to open mics every night, that's great, but you also have to live your life, and you've got to be able to pull material from your life. Because I guess my point is, first of all, I host a lot of shows, so I hear a lot of comedy, and I hear a lot of comedy that's not really ready yet, but I also hear a lot of people who are starting to develop, and like, people will talk shit and go, this guy's not funny. I go, give him a chance. He's got something there. I've seen people get really funny. I'm a big advocate of, taking classes and doing open mics and working your craft. I'm very encouraging. But you've got to take your shit from your own life, not from what you think is trending or for what you think is going to get you on TV. And that's how you're going to develop your point of view. That's authentic.
It's one of those things that I found traveling around the globe, as Biff has. Most of the people I end up meeting who have racist tendency, we say, don't, it's like, oh, I've met this black guy, so I know what I'm talking about. Like, literally live in these bubbles where it's like, dude, you live here. Your whole joke, and about teaching English and the whole taking, they're going to take my job. You're helping me take my job. It's like, I've said that to certain people. I'm like, okay, so you're worried about this woman walking 5,000 miles carrying her child. She's not coming here to steal my TV. And if she is, I will help her carry it out. But it's like, what do you like? People used to be amazed, because even when I lived like in Playa in North Hollywood, I almost never in my whole experience in LA locked my doors, because I always had incredibly friendly but barking dogs, and two, it's so much more expensive to replace a door that's been kicked in than the shitty TV or couch that I have. And I live on I lived on the second floor of this apartment in North Hollywood that, to get a couch up there was a Herculean effort. It's like, dude, if you can get this shit out, then I will grab the heavy end, but please don't hit
that's
my
fucking
forehead.
Funny.
No, but that's the whole thing. If your comedy comes from living, because a lot of these people who have these paint by numbers, like either rely on stereotypes, rely on racism, rely on misogyny. It's like, yeah, because you're getting that on a sitcom you watched in the 70s or 80s growing up. You're not pulling from life experiences. And the people that I really like, you probably get this question a lot because you're a comic and you happen to be a female. Are you for or against? Because I'll tell you now, Miss Maisel was one of my favorite shows in the last 10 years. Did you like or not like that show or the show Hacks, which is about women who happen to not...
I haven't seen either one of them.
Really?
I was too busy actually doing stand-up to watch Miss Maisel. I was just too busy.
Nice.
Like, I do stand-up like 3 or 4 nights a week. I haven't seen a single episode of it. I saw the trailer for Hacks. I'll tell you what I watched over the pandemic. I loved a lot of stuff. I loved The Serpent on Netflix. I loved the Yorkshire Ripper, the miniseries, because that's where I grew up in England, and that was really... I loved A Teacher. A Teacher was great. I loved Waco, but I'm probably not going to watch something about comedy so much, because I'm out at the clubs all the time.
No, I get... Yeah. Biff watches so much hockey, it is crazy. No, and it's great, but like my whole life, it's like I always watched like either the LA Kings when I lived there or the Bruins, and I like that. But honestly, even in high school, even in college and stuff like that, I'd much rather be at the rink playing, than home watching. And people would always assume, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? It's like, no, I was out there doing that myself, right. But no, I didn't know if like, because they're 2 series that are about very strong, powerful, and one in the late 50s, which is, it's a great show. My wife, like every time I watch it, my wife is one of those, did you see the wallpaper in the background? Or because she likes the style. I'm like, no, I was actually watching her tell jokes. And then the show Hacks, which is really good. But again, it was just
that's new,
kind of along those though. I do have, because what I think one of the things that, as audience members and most of us don't really realize is how much of a craft it is that you do, right? I mean, when you talk about, you talked earlier about 2 years of getting it to a point where you can put it in a special. So I mean, how does your like craft work in terms of refining an idea, a joke? Do you did the pandemic hurt it because you didn't have an audience, or how did that work? How does that work for you?
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a really sweet question. I feel like I definitely grew as an artist over the pandemic, and it was because of Zoom. I probably did about 300 hours of Zoom comedy shows. Nice. I loved sitting on my ass in my room, maybe getting crocked. I hosted the Palm Springs International Comedy Festival. I did the Boston Comedy Festival for the first time via Zoom.
Nice.
So I met a bunch of people over Zoom, and now some of them I'm meeting in real life, but I definitely felt like I grew as an artist. Hell, I developed about 45 minutes of material. If I weren't so busy just like getting back to stuff, if somebody said, hey, we need a new special, we need to record it in a month, I would just grind and do it. But it's one of those things, like as an indie comic, everything you produce yourself. So nobody's going to pay you and say, hey, here's $5,000 so you don't have to hustle in any other way for 6 weeks. So that's not going to happen. But I will say I grew as an artist, and I like doing Zoom comedy. And I think it helped me with my timing.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I accomplished a lot. And I also made more money than I'm used to making on OnlyFans. I moved up a damn tax bracket. My insurance cost went up. I didn't take any government money. I took the whatchamacallit check. I took the stimulus check because I came out, but I really made like a little more money. Like it felt good. I hustled on OnlyFans. I got a lot of new fans, and a lot of those fans from OnlyFans, they came to my Zoom comedy shows.
Nice. That's awesome.
Biff and I had talked about this over the pandemic. There's so many comedy shows, which whether it's a Lewis Black, I paid to watch Patton Oswalt and stuff. Like so many people I love, but then there was people who I like follow, like Maria Bamford, who routinely posts. It's like, if anybody can jump on in the next hour, I got to work out this 10-minute bit. I'll send you like huge people like her were like, hey, I got to work out stuff. I need an audience. Log on and I'll give you a t-shirt to come log on, or I'll do. And it was so right now. And then a month later, she's like, yep, here's my new special. That I can't thank these people. So it's fun because I ended up doing a similar thing where I couldn't find open mics. I'm going to have to do these military tours. I ended up reaching out to a bunch of comics. I'm like, or people who've done it before, haven't done it, or funny people. I'm like, I need to work out. Can we start a club? And I ended up starting a weekly club that now I'm talking to a place here in Lowell, Mass. I have a meeting next Tuesday. It's like, I don't want to host a stand-up night. I don't want an open mic night. What I'm starting is basically a collaborative, basically something where it's a stand-up club where you come, you do your thing, but part of the deal is you have to do punch-up on other people's stuff. Like afterwards, like you can't do your stuff and bail. You have to do your stuff, stay for a couple people, and then literally here's my stuff, here's your stuff. How can we all get on the same page? Let's wrap it up, which is a really good note. Sally, where can everybody see your comedy?
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, obviously on Amazon, the specials on there. And also I've got Porn Mom Podcast, which is every Monday. That's on all the podcast platforms. And then if somebody just wants to check out like sleazy, cheesy little skits or whatever, if you go to SallyMullinsComedy.com, that's my YouTube. And I've just got a ton of crap. In fact, you guys might like this. One of the things I do on there is I'll be trying to make a porn clip, right? So I'll be laying on my bed and I'll be like, I know I'm your stepmom, but I have feelings for you. And then a cat will like jump on the bed or something. So I'll have to go cut, you know. It's just like selfie stuff, and then like a pet will invade the screen. So those get a lot of attention on there.
I am so glad that we reconnected.
I know.
You're special again. I'm saying this flat out. My wife and I sat there and kept having to hit the 10-second button, over and over.
That makes me feel really good. When are you guys coming to LA?
We don't know. There's a bunch of projects that it's home. Like, we want to be there. We left there because she had this great job. We traveled, life threw a curveball. We came back here, but almost every day we're like, yeah, we got to get back there. That said, like, the house we live in and a pool at a great place is about our mortgage is about half the rent we paid for a 2-bedroom place in
Exactly. Well, let me invite you guys, because I'm trying to get a house like in Barstow, like the high desert, by the end of the year. And when I get that house, I'm going to have the biggest fucking party. So this is an early invite.
Are you looking for it? Are you going to get back on the road? Are you going to do more military tours? Are you looking forward? Do you like those really quickly? Because we're going to let you go. Do you like those?
I love the military tours are awesome. I think that you have to be a really good comic to do them. I grew a lot. I love them. That was when I stopped depending on alcohol because you went to bases and they were dry. I had some of the most amazing shows of my career. I don't think I can do military tours anymore because I do porn. I think it might be an issue.
Which is so fucking... Because as we know, nobody on bases looks at porn. If there's one thing I know about Christians in Utah, they don't ever look at porn, says the guy who worked in Utah on a show where I think they digest twice as much as I do. And that's fucking saying a lot.
A lot.
That's saying a lot. Sally, you were awesome. I'm going to continue to bug you about, doing other projects and stuff like this. I'm so glad we connected.
I know. You have always been such a great guy. And you know what? You look exactly the fucking same. Yeah. You look the same.
Yeah.
Well, that's because he trimmed his nose hair for you today.
He was always like that hairy nose. Oh, he did clip it. Okay, whatever. I miss them. I miss the hair.
Did. She grooms me like a spider monkey, because otherwise I would just I look like a respectful homeless person now, not like Anyways, Sally, this was great. It will. Everybody, I'm going to put, on the end of the podcast, the places you can see them, from Fans Only to the Amazon to the podcast. You're kicking ass. You're an inspiration. Thank you for being awesome.
Thank you so much.
So cute, you guys. Thanks for having me. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks
bye.
so much.
Thanks,
all right.
Sally.
Bye.
Tonic
She walks